All right. Well, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Rayann Ibasco. I am the Partnership Director at EduCo USA. Today, we do have two important people that I've worked with in the past and have been working with that would share with us the sort of like their feedback and what they know in terms of like the impact of the recent projected results of the U.S. elections. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce first Jill Barr, the Associate Vice Provost of Graduate Education, as well as she's also the Senior Assistant Dean of Graduate Enrollment at Umbc. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Ryan. Hello, everyone.
Awesome. And then, of course, we have with us David DeMaria, the Associate Vice Provost for International Education. David is also a board member of the American International Recruitment Council, or people typically know it as ARC. If I'm not mistaken, David, you're also a chair-elect of NAFSA's International Education Leadership Knowledge Community, right?
That's correct.
Awesome. All right. Well, again, thank you both for joining me today. Now, basically, in the last week is very interesting. The whole world is basically watching the U.S. and the results of the election. With that, just in general, with those projected election results, how are you guys feeling? I'll start with Jill.
I'm feeling optimistic, honestly. I feel that there's a lot of really positive talk coming out of folks who know these things, like David, for example, that, you know, there's a new thinking a little bit about what international education means. And I feel very optimistic, frankly, Ryan.
Thank you, Jill. How about you, David?
I agree. Very hopeful. Looking forward to seeing what the next 4 years bring in terms of education, in terms of science, and in terms of friendly relations with various countries around the world.
Awesome. That's great to hear, definitely. And I myself, I'm also hopeful with the changes that it could actually bring to, of course, our international education community. Now, taking a deep dive into the election results. Of course, Dr. Joe Biden, President-elect Joe Biden's wife, is an educator. If I'm not mistaken, she taught at, or she's still teaching at North Virginia Community College.
Yes, she's a community college professor. That's correct.
Yeah, awesome.
And I should tell everybody out there that I'm from Delaware, the same state that President-elect Joe Biden is from.
Yeah.
I'm kind of proud of that.
Yes, definitely. We all are, and you should be definitely. There's that's something to look forward to, of course. I believe that this is a driving force to improve things in terms of education, especially to domestic students. But how about for international students? Do you guys see this as a huge help for changing or improving the policies in terms of international education? I'll start with David.
Yeah, I think it's Dr. Joe Biden. I think knowing that President-elect Joe Biden is a graduate of a public university, which is the first we've had since 1964. So that's a huge opportunity. Vice President-elect Harris being a graduate of a historically Black college university, Howard University. I think this is all opportunities here. It's a group of individuals who highly value higher education, who have done extremely well as a result of their education, their training. Two things that President-elect Biden singled out in his acceptance speech, if you had an opportunity to watch that, listen to it, he talked about education and said educators are going to be very, very, very happy. Mm-hmm. He also said, science with this coronavirus, he wants the scientists informing future policies. And this all bodes well, not just for colleges and universities and students or part of those institutions, but I would say for the nation and for the world in terms of having the U.S. as a player, a partner, as we continue to deal with the impact of this pandemic. And I think that with these individuals and their educational backgrounds, they understand hard work. They understand that determination pays off. And that's something at UMBC that we call grit. So our students who come and we say, if you can work hard and you're determined to succeed, we're going to do everything we can to help you to achieve those dreams. And that's really what public universities are all about.
And I think if I can add to that, if you look to, of course, President-elect Biden was the vice president under President Obama. So I feel like that there can be some real clues here in terms of his views on international education. If you look back to the Obama administration, and you'll see, I believe, of course, nothing is certain right now, but I believe you'll see some common themes in the Biden administration that you saw in the Obama administration.
I can't agree more with that, definitely. If I'm not mistaken, well, correct me if I'm wrong. I know that in the past 4 years, basically, there was really a slow growth in terms of international enrollment. If I'm not mistaken, past 4 years was like 0.5% overall, versus the years before that, or basically under Obama administration. But yeah, that definitely sounds amazing. My next question is that I'm gonna take a deep dive on the immigration policies now. So under the Trump administration, immigration policies is always the forefront of his agenda. It has always been in the news, either not just in the US, but all over the world. With President-elect Biden, David, I'll start with you. What do you think would change here?
Yeah, well, from what I'm reading and hearing, on day one, we can expect non-COVID related travel bans to go away. This is something that if you go to the Biden campaign website, you go to the transition pages talking about policy priorities, it's one of the top 5 is to get rid of what much of the world refer to as the Muslim travel bans. So we can see those going away. There's also talk about sensible enforcement policies, meaning when you have immigration and customs enforcement officers, they should be targeting criminals, individuals who are committing crimes, not necessarily families. And this is, again, what you would find on the Biden administration, the outlined policy priorities. There's talk about streamlining green card applications. There's talk about creating a new visa category that would allow cities and counties to petition for higher levels of immigrants to support their growth. So if there's needs in certain areas. And then what I think is probably of interest to many prospective international students is that President-elect Biden has really has this commitment to seeing that graduates of PhD programs in STEM fields in the US would be cap exempt, say from H-1B, and saying that really any international student who earns a doctorate in the United States should have a green card with that degree. Now, obviously a lot has to happen to make that take place, but that's the policy stance, that's the vision. Obviously we got 4 years, we got to see what happens, but that's where we're starting out at, and it will be very interesting to see where it leads.
Awesome. Jill, how about on your side? Any addition?
I just wanted to comment on, so that's the international students perspective that David brings, but to complete that picture, there's something in the US called the DREAM Act, and again, that came out of the Obama administration, and that was designed to allow a young person who was brought into this country as a child to be able to stay in this country and work towards their citizenship without fear of deportation. And that has been at risk for under the Trump administration. And one of the first things that the Biden administration has said they're going to do, along with removing the Muslim ban, is to sort of reassert our value and our importance with the dreamers. And so it gives you a little bit of a taste of what's happening domestically, internally with our immigrants in the US already, as well as the immigration policy for international students.
Awesome. And yeah, both of those are definitely goes alongside to really get a whole picture of what's happening in the US, specifically, not just in international education, but also overall like education industry here in the US, because it is definitely a huge part of our economy as well. where the student actually goes towards their, completing their degree and after that. So, well, David already answered actually two of my incoming questions, but I guess one thing that I wanted to ask the both of you is that all of these changes with immigration policies that the Biden campaign have been saying, or President-elect Biden would prioritize. With, as you guys know, everyone kept on saying in the news that U.S. seemed to be more divided than ever, just based on like the voting counts and all that. And with the majority of the Senate seats are filled by the Republican senators. So do you guys think—
That's not determined yet, Ryan. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
The
Definitely.
Senate election, there's still a runoff in Georgia. So right now, the Senate is evenly divided between the two parties.
Right. In the event that, let's say, the Senate is basically filled with Republicans, so how is it going to be possible, or is it possible, or will President-elect Joe Biden will have a hard time trying to implement his plan in terms of immigration policies?
So can I take this one, David?
Sure.
So I'm a student of politics and history, and I do want to say that I don't feel that a divided government is going to be as bad as it seems. And because Joe Biden was in the Senate for 20 some, maybe 30 years, he has established relationships with people on both sides of the aisle, as we say in this country, which means both parties. I think any kind of sensible legislation that has an economic benefit to it, such as the policies around allowing people to stay with education, to continue with whether they're going to continue with internships and OPT, or whether they're going to look for full-time work in this country, is all about benefiting the country as a whole. And I feel that, but I keep wanting to say Vice President Biden, but President-elect Biden will be able to work with, I think, well-meaning politicians on both sides to affect positive change for, immigration, for international students, and for international visa holders.
Sounds great. David, any addition?
Yeah, and I would just add, President Trump, not a lot changed in terms of immigration law. What happened was there's a lot of perception about changes in U.S. policy, but that was due to more than 450 executive actions. And so we have three branches of government, and the president can issue orders and different types of memos that can direct the government to act a certain way. And it might be that if we have a divided government, then President-elect Biden would also have to rule through executive action in some ways. But I think, going along with what Jill said, the difference here is President-elect Biden has been in the White House before, has done a lot of work in the Capitol, Congress, and has a lot of allies who hopefully will be able to move, again, the sensible immigration policy forward. And I'm using that language that's from the Biden website. So it's sensible policy that hopefully would be seen as beneficial to international students, to colleges, universities, and the host communities as well.
Awesome. Those are great points, definitely. Now, I'm going to switch over the topic from President-elect Joe Biden to the person who just created another timeline, or rather history in the US. So Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, as a first woman, people of color, and descent of an immigrant from India and Jamaica, so Vice President-elect Harris represents a lot of our international students and also immigrants like myself here in the US. How much impact do you think this has to our perspective and current international students? Do you guys think this is going to be a game changer? I'll start with David.
Yeah, so again, one thing that was that President-elect Biden has said is that he wants to have the most diverse administration that we've ever seen. So I think, as we get the different pieces of the government coming together, I think we're going to see a lot more diversity. There's going to be a more inclusive approach and trying to reflect, obviously, the U.S. is a very diverse country. And so I think having, Kamala Harris, she's shattered a number of we call them glass ceilings. So it's a barrier that you just can't reach the top. And then she shattered those ceilings in a number of categories, which is great. But we're still waiting to see, too, the rest of the administration come together. And so there likely will be some policies that, again, are going to sensible immigration, right? Would provide opportunities for those students who, again, come from whatever country in the world, doesn't matter which country, but you come to the U.S., you work hard. There is a preference for science, technology, engineering, math in terms of, again, the policy documents that you look at online with President-elect Biden. But there's going to be opportunities for those who want to continue and get experience, practical training, and so on in the United States. It sounds like those opportunities would at least remain at current levels, if not expand, based on current policy.
So Vice President-elect Harris, as many of you know, was, or still is, the daughter of a graduate student from India who came to study and to get her PhD. And she talks about that almost every opportunity she gets, because she really understands that her mother came to this country with the hopes of a life of the mind, a life to contribute to society, and her passion for education. And that was trickled down to her daughter, who is now the incoming Vice President of the United States. So it's a wonderful story about what an international student who comes to America, who gets a degree and stays, and their daughter, that person's daughter, becomes the Vice President of the United States. And that's it's a story that we should all celebrate.
Definitely. I've seen a lot of posts from students as well that it means a lot to them, just because, of course, of the trace or the roots of Kamala Harris coming from South India, of course, and also her dad coming from Jamaica. So it really makes a lot of impact to them. Saying it says a lot, as you said, Jill, like there's a lot of possibilities. And as VP-elect Kamala Harris said, like this is a country of opportunities and possibilities. So there's really a lot of things that could happen in the future that, maybe some of the students from Umbc from India would be able to, run for office eventually. So those are the kind of things that they're really looking forward to, and they've found a common ground with VP-elect Kamala Harris with that. Now, I guess my last question for the both of you is that, well, not really realistically last, but in terms of the topic, my next question is about coronavirus. So right now the cases are getting higher and higher, which basically we've seen a trend starting a couple of weeks ago. And this is happening across the United States. How do you think this incoming administration would handle this? I know that we used to have a pandemic response team, but it got disbanded. Some of those staff were transferred over to the NSC, the National Security Council. Do you think there would be a huge difference with the strategic plan of the Biden administration?
Well, President-elect Biden has already convened sort of an all-star panel of doctors and strategists to address the COVID pandemic. So he started before day one of his presidency, setting the stage for a much more proactive response to the pandemic. And of course, the news this week that there is a very positive sign about a vaccine. So I think those two things coupled, we will have a couple of really hard months to get through. And we know that. And I think this country is getting more and more willing to do what is necessary to stop the spread. So we need to like just kind of stick with it, continue to, you know, as in your country, wherever you are, wear masks, stay distant, don't go to parties, all of those things. We are doing that here. We have an incoming administration that is very supportive of keeping those messages out there to the public, as well as building a really very proactive response. And if I just might add, just very briefly, there's been some recent reporting about the distribution of the vaccine and how we're going to be doing that in this country. And I've been pretty impressed with the level of attention given to not only creating a vaccine, but once we have it, producing it and being able to distribute it. It's a major task. It's very complex, but we have really started to process all of that now for when we're able to start the distribution.
And one thing I would add is, so certainly I'm also made hopeful by the emphasis on science and allowing the scientists to lead on these issues. These are the individuals who've devoted their lives to infectious diseases, public health, and so on. And you know, we should really do what they're telling us to do. And at the same time, I think if you're looking at the United States, remember it's a massive nation. You have 50 states to choose from. And each of those states is different, right, in their approach to how they handle the virus and how they handle a range of other issues, even driving laws. And I would say I'm really impressed with the state of Maryland. Maryland has done well. Cases are, haven't spiked in the same sense that we've seen in other places. It's been a very safe environment. We have, I would say, a governor who's been committed to public health, public safety. Our universities mostly went primarily online to keep students and our faculty and staff safe. And we've seen what's happened in other parts of the country where they didn't do that. And so I feel very lucky living in Maryland, as opposed to living in, maybe I won't name any specific states, but some other states where it seems the virus has gotten really out of control. So if you're looking to study in the US or any country, you want to also look at local conditions, consider the states, the province, the local, city, town, what's going on there, and then what is their policy approach, because that's likely going to predict the future as long as we have this virus around us.
Definitely. Now, I guess one last thing that I would ask from you guys is, what would be, is there any advice that you can give or last words to our either prospective international students out there who are still planning to come to the US in spring, either in spring or fall 2021, not just students, but also how about our education agents or partners across the world? I'll start with David.
Well, first word I come up with is patience, but I'm going to turn to David to see what he says.
I'm going to stay focused on your dreams. This is a very strange time we're living in. Depending on where you are in the world, you may still have some travel restrictions in place, local travel restrictions. There may be curfews. It just depends on where you are. And I would say that we have a choice. We can just wait this time out, or we can use this time. Waiting this time out is using every waking hour, maybe streaming videos, playing video games, doing all that fun stuff. But I would challenge you to use this time to study English if English is not your native language. Use this time to study for exams, to look at some of the courses that you would be taking when you go to the US to pursue that bachelor's or master's degree, and start trying to understand some of those basic concepts so that you can excel. Maybe use the time also to explore universities that you're interested in, and not just their academic programs, but what are the student organizations like? what does it look like in the local community? You could use Google Earth to walk around the streets, literally. And if it's not possible now, say, to do an internship, there's a lot of these internships that are virtual, or volunteer projects that you can do virtually, which could help you when you apply for admission to a college or university. So use this time, be productive, don't let it go to waste.
Thank you, Dave.
But at the same time, be patient. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with the school to which you're applying, or the schools to which you're applying. We're all working through this. We will get to the other side. And if you follow Dr. DeMaria's advice, you will be a well-informed, well-prepared applicant and admitted applicant and student at a U.S. university, maybe in the state of Maryland, by the way.
Definitely. All right. Well, again, thank you so much to the both of you for joining me today. This has been very, very helpful to provide our partners as well as prospective students out there to give an insight on what could be coming by 2021. If I'm not mistaken, just to quickly plug, the earliest deadline for Umbc graduate school would be January 1 for most of the MS programs, right, Joe?
For most of the programs for fall 2021, yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. But yeah, again, thank you. And I hope to see you guys in person soon once this is all over.
Indeed. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank
Nice
you.
speaking with you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.